Yeah, let's talk about Bari Weiss, who is perhaps the most annoying, one of the most annoying people. I mean, I really despise her. I think she is just total scum, like the worst kind of Alan Dershowitz style, like anti-free speech person. She is most notable probably in this circle, at least, for highlighting the IDW and giving them the New York Times seal of approval. She's the worst kind of pseudo-intellectual, annoying dipshit who acts like they care about free speech when in fact they clearly do not care about free speech, as evidenced by literally everything that they've done to get people fired for saying stuff like Palestinians are human beings and deserve full human rights, which to someone like Bari Weiss is of course a clear indication that you are an anti-Semite and no longer should have your academic job or your scholarship or jobs ever for the rest of your life, as a matter of fact. So suck my cock if you think that Bari Weiss is a free speech advocate. She is not. Bari Weiss, throughout her entire career, decided that she was going to be, the free speech advocate at the New York Times. But of course, much like all of those other comfortable neoliberals at the New York Times, their understanding of the free speech conversation is basically just an intellectualized version of what the quarter pounder or Sargon of Akkad say on a regular basis on the internet. They literally do the anti-sjw rhetoric on the New York Times, but they use more academic jargon and it makes it seem like it's more legitimate. They also mask themselves and shield themselves with liberalism to make it seem like they are actual liberals, when in fact they are not. They are conservative, reactionary dipshits for the most part, even though they might have some left-leaning or some liberal points of view. She's so annoying. She's not likable in any meaningful capacity. She looks like Stavros with a wig on, even though Stavros is a king. And yes, I am kind of body shaming a little bit, but at the same time also saving myself by saying I'd clap Stavros's cheeks. She wanted to be recognized as a free speech icon, and of course when that literally didn't happen and an opportunity presented itself, she resigned from the New York Times in a blaze of glory. The hilarity, of course, is that people like myself actually fucking get victimized by cancel culture for saying shit like American foreign policy caused 9/11. These are of course ideas that go against the grain. They are not a part of what is acceptable in the mainstream box of ideas that you can actually openly state. Noam Chomsky, who even signed that letter that everyone freaked out on him over, routinely talks about this and how like American free speech is completely manufactured. It's a box of ideas. As long as you stay within the realm of acceptable thought, then you have free speech. But you technically don't if you ever go outside of that box. Obviously, on the one hand, it's like mask off Nazis. If you're doing Nazi apologia or if you're doing Nazi style agitation, you're still in the box of free speech. But if you mask off as a Nazi, then you're outside of it. Most of the leftist thought, like advocating for anti-imperialism, that sort of stuff, is completely outside of the box of acceptable ideas. Someone just said, yes, don't shit on BLM or your toast, except that wasn't necessarily inside of the box of free speech until recently. And even now, you don't get immediate backlash for shitting on BLM. Look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump literally still calls Black Lives Matter a hateful idea. So no, that's not the case. So let's look at Bari Weiss's incredibly long resignation letter. It's so self-important. It's just like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
I was hired with the goal of bringing in voices that would not otherwise appear in your pages. First-time writers, centrists, conservatives.
When I think about unheard voices from the New York Times, my immediate opinion is centrists and conservatives. Absolutely no one, and I mean no one, hears from the centrists and the conservatives on the New York Times. Here's the thing. If this is your point of view, if this is how you start your conversation, you're a psychopath. They not only have centrists and conservatives, they allowed Tom Cotton to publish an opinion piece on the op-ed section without editing it, where he basically said there's no quarters for rioters. Where he said we're gonna kill black people that are rioting on the New York Times. So suck my dick if you think the New York Times is not conservative enough, especially considering they very routinely advocated for the Iraq War and totally lobbed up the government lies fed to them, and now hire those same George W. Bush era psychopathic war criminals to write a million never Trump Republican thought pieces on how Trump is a boo-boo man, even though you agree with him on everything that he does, just not the way he does it. I'm not even gonna get to half of these names, but it's hilarious. I mean, she's talking about like Jesse Singal, also most famous for not being a comedy writer or anything like that, but most famous for being just transphobic, like openly transphobic now.
Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor.
By the third paragraph, after you've talked about like blatant falsehoods about the New York Times not being fucking neocon enough, what do you want? You want the New York Times to literally just be like, we are pro-Hitler? Is that what you want? Consider the many puff pieces the New York Times aired normalizing Nazis, like the Nazi boy next door, or what do we do with the white working class Nazis? Like the many different puff pieces they wrote immediately in the aftermath of Donald Trump. Should we analyze the material conditions that might have led to an agitated populace to go and vote for further and further reactionary politicians? No, I think these Nazis have some good ideas. That was the New York Times. And Bari Weiss like looking at that and saying, it's not enough.
Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences, rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then...
Pog, true, except the narrowest focus of the New York Times is literally professional managerial class and wealthy liberals who want to feel better about American imperialism and America's awful, nefarious domestic policies that are pro-capitalist. That's it. She's right, but not in the way that she thinks she's right. New York Times' narrow focus is insanely annoying. MSNBC as well. They have never Trump Republicans on, an insignificant constituency. If the New York Times actually wanted to shift its focus, they perhaps should focus on non-voters, which is the plurality in this country in comparison to the Democratic Party voters and the Republican Party voters. But does the New York Times focus on that? No.
My own forays into wrongthink have made me the subject of constant bullying by colleagues who disagree with my views.
Wrongthink, dude. Immediately I'm like, wrongthink. Yeah, dude. I have nothing to this. It's like, it's a trigger point for me. As soon as I hear that shit, I'm like, wrongthink. Yeah, guess what's wrongthink, dude? BDS. Automatically wrongthink. What has Bari Weiss done to any number of different activists and thinkers that have said things like Palestinians deserve human rights? That's fucking wrongthink. Not only is that wrongthink, but it's literally backed by legislation. Like in this country, the real anti-free speech regulation is never directed at Nazis, but instead directed at people that want to do activism for Palestinians. It's directed at people that are doing activism on the streets for Black Lives Matter. It is psychotic that a wealthy, white, liberal like this, who gets paid and rewarded handsomely to cry about how targeted she feels, can just go out and just straight up say this shit. It is completely psychotic.
I have learned to brush off comments about how I'm writing about the Jews again. Several colleagues...
That's a cool way to avoid any sort of criticism. Again, boom, identity politics shield activated. These are people who freak out and say, oh, identity politics, I hate identity politics. Boom, I'm a Jew. Did you know? I hate anti-tribal. I'm anti-tribalist. Oh, I'm a Jew, by the way. And people are saying I'm a Nazi, but I'm a Jew. You can't act like people are saying, oh, she's just writing about the Jews again, when what you are writing about is literally dunking on BDS and then talking about how these like pro-Palestinian protesters are the most significant problem that is going to destroy America.
Some coworkers insist I need to be rooted out if this company is to be a truly inclusive one.
Hilarious though, because that didn't happen, and because it didn't happen, Bari Weiss had to literally resign. They wouldn't fire her because of course they wouldn't fire her, because she doesn't threaten the neoliberal hegemonic culture. That's why. That's the truth, okay? The only time that they actually low-key threaten it is not when they threaten it exactly, but when they go too far and have mask-off white supremacists on. Let me tell you how quickly you could have gotten canceled by the New York Times and all of the Never Trump Republicans and any number of these people. If you said America's foreign policy is built upon death, destruction, and genocide of black and brown people all around the world, and that we should really scale back dramatically on our military industrial complex's interests, and it's frustrating to constantly have this conversation over and over again. Boom, canceled by the New York Times. You get fucking fired in a month. They will fire for some other shit. Okay? Another way to get fired very quickly is to literally talk about the things that Bari Weiss criticizes on a regular basis, like saying Ilhan Omar is not fucking anti-Semitic. Shut the fuck up. You just hate the fact that there is a brown woman wearing a hijab who is more woke than you, and more people like her. That's it. You're just upset that a Muslim woman is talking about Palestinian rights and or even talking about the outsized influence that the Israeli lobby has on American foreign policy and domestic policy. It is psychotic to assume that that is like anti-Semitic to say. One immediately admits that, you know, Israel is an ethno-state for Jews, which it's not supposed to be, by the way. And secondly, how the fuck can you sit here and act like that's not the case when AIPAC is able to pass legislation that literally attacks the fundamental principle of free speech that Bari Weiss is supposedly protecting? Insanity, dude. Holy shit.
Still, other New York Times employees publicly smear me as a liar and a bigot on Twitter with no fear that harassing me will be met with appropriate action. They never are.
This is the most Karen part of this, because it's like, oh, I get a six-figure salary from the New York Times to say, everybody say boo-boo words to me, and then everybody say I'm the real hero here, and then they don't get any repercussions for saying boo-boo words to me. Like, shut the fuck up, dumb. The problem for all of these people is that they are so shielded from criticism. They're so shielded from criticism in their literal ivory towers that anytime someone is like, your opinion is dog shit and I hate you, they collapse. They're like, what? What the wait, whoa, what? Stop. Whoa, dude, you just did a murder, dude. I've been murdered. Stop it. I'm murdered, dude. They are doing McCarthyism while they claim to be the victim of it. If you were the victim of it, why didn't you get fired, you dumb motherfucker? You literally had to resign.
If a person's ideology is in keeping with the new orthodoxy, they and their work remain unscrutinized. Everyone else lives in fear of the digital Thunderdome.
Like, here's a really good way to analyze pieces like this. Just point to a reason. Like, just point to an example, please. For the love of Christ and all things holy to the Karen population, just point to one example that is demonstrable and clear. They don't have it. That's not a thing. That's why they're like latching on to vague generalizations that like everyone kind of hates. Okay, cancel culture, I hate it. It's like, okay, what is it? I don't know. It's just when people are being mean to me in the comment section. Wait, that's cancel culture? What are you, crazy? When people are losing their jobs and livelihoods and shit and are being completely blacklisted, and you're gonna sit here and say it's cancel culture that people said meanie bobini things about you? What the fuck is this, dude? Digital Thunderdome. It's literally people saying mean things about me online hurts my fifis. So now I'm making a big public show of like resigning from the New York Times so that I can go start my new venture.
It took the paper 2 days and 2 jobs to say that the Tom Cotton op-ed fell short of our standards.
She just dunked on her own take with the admission that the Tom Cotton op-ed was aired. It took approximately 76 letters for her to destroy her own fucking argument that she was building up right here. It makes no sense. We attached an editor's note on a travel story about Jaffa shortly after it was published because it failed to touch on Empire Net. There's still none appended of Cheryl Strait's fawning interview with the writer Alice Walker, who's a proud anti-Semite who believes in lizard Illuminati. Wait, isn't she literally doing free speech for me not to thee right here. I mean, I don't know about Alice Walker, but isn't she crying about free speech and then turning around and saying, but here are some people that should not have the free speech but are getting free speech in a op-ed about how she's been attacked, and that's actually the worst kind of free speech attack that could ever happen?
This is a galaxy in which, to choose just a few recent examples, the Soviet space program is lauded for its diversity, the doxing of teenagers in the name of justice is condoned, and the worst caste systems in human history includes the United States alongside Nazi Germany.
The woman who wrote that piece clapped back hard. I'm used to learn that in her resignation letter, Bari Weiss cited an article of mine on Soviet cosmonauts as an example of New York Times groupthink. Here's the article in question. It was a short background article in a cluster that accompanied a feature on the black American pilot Ed Dwight, who might have walked on the moon if not for racist discrimination in the Air Force and NASA. He reports that one of his bosses called him boy. Perhaps Weiss should consult Ed Dwight on hostile work environments. Weiss seems to have convinced herself that her woke nemesis received nothing but praise and admiration from the public. Of course, this is wrong. I wasn't on Twitter then, but my article was targeted on social media, got lots of sexist, racist, red baiting, and jingoistic email abuse. The most abuse I've ever received on everything I've ever written. There was even a whole article mocking out the New York Post at the bastion of civil heterodox debate. The gist of the hateful reactions I received was that no one should ever criticize America, the best country in the history of the universe, and also how dare you say the USSR sent a woman and people of color to space before the US did. Suck my dick, you Colin Kaepernick wannabe. My presentation of lesser known facts about the space race became a screen for projected rage and resentment over American political debates about race, gender, socialism, etc. Weiss is for uncomfortable truths until they undermine American exceptionalism. More courage, Barry. They lose their fucking minds when someone criticizes American imperialism, like American exceptionalism. That is the worst thing you can do. That's not wrong think, though. That's of course not wrong think. That's right think.
But I can no longer do the work that you brought me here to do, the work that Adolf Fox described in that famous 1896 statement, to make of the columns of the New York Times a forum for the consideration of all questions of public importance, and to that end to invite intelligent discussion from all shades of opinion.
If you want to talk about, like, this is the bastion of intellectual thought from that era. This is Los Angeles Times. 500 nabbed by LA wetback raiders. Promotion of Operation Wetback, justifying it for the most part. Just straight up horrific shit. This is just off the top of my dome that I can think of. These institutions have always, both historically and now in contemporary society, justified the current status quo. That's why they have power. That's why they exist. That's why they're paid handsomely. The type of people upset for Barry. Donald Trump Jr. This is a must-read for everyone. If you want to get a glimpse of today's enlightened media, in this case, the New York Times, you need to look no further. Wow, if you read only one thing this week, read this eloquent, profound, incisive, and true letter. This letter of resignation from Bari Weiss is devastating. Ben Shapiro, who once advocated to throw Al Gore in jail for the Sedition Act. Ben Shapiro, who's written numerous books on how pornography should be banned because it's immoral. Mr. Free Speech. Like, Ben Shapiro does not care about free speech, okay? Can I just repeat this over and over again so that it sticks in your fucking minds? Ben Shapiro does not care about free speech, brothers and sisters. He does not. Con, the New York Times transition from a newspaper to a safe space for the woke mob continues. Yeah, when I think of the woke mob, I think of the New York Times.